The first time I realized a man could look directly into my eyes and lie to me, I was standing beside a hitching post after Sunday church. The air smelled like damp grass and horse sweat. Families were climbing into their buggies. Children were laughing. Women were gathering leftover pies and casserole dishes from the fellowship meal. Everything looked normal. Everything looked holy. And yet my stomach felt strange. I watched the man I thought I might marry smile at another young woman while telling me he had no interest in anyone else. At the time, I told myself I was imagining things. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe all of them. I didn't know then that over the next 3 years I would court 5 different Amish men. 5 men who spoke about honesty. 5 men who quoted scripture. 5 men who promised they respected me. And only one of them would tell me the truth. The rest hid something from me. Something that changed the way I saw my community forever. I know now that what happened wasn't really about those men. It was about the system that taught us all to stay silent. But I didn't understand that then. Back then, I was just a 23-year-old Amish woman trying to find a husband. My name is Emma. I was born and raised in an old-order Amish settlement in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. The farm where I grew up sat at the end of a narrow dirt road lined with cornfields and maple trees. Our white farmhouse had no electricity, no television, and no internet. We heated the rooms with wood stoves and lit dark corners with kerosene lamps. For most of my childhood, I loved that life. I loved the smell of fresh bread cooling on my mother's kitchen table. I loved hearing horses snort softly in the barn before sunrise. I loved the way church Sundays brought everyone together. But years later, I left. Leaving cost me almost everything. My family, my church, many of my closest friends. And the story I'm about to tell is one of the reasons why. Before I continue, if stories like mine help you understand a world few outsiders ever see, consider subscribing and sharing your thoughts below. It means more than you know. In our community, marriage wasn't simply about love. Marriage was obedience. Marriage was expectation. Marriage was your future. A young woman wasn't pressured openly. Nobody walked up and demanded she marry. But the pressure was everywhere. It lived in every church gathering, every family meal, every conversation after worship, every glance from older women when another girl became engaged. I remember sitting at long wooden tables during weddings and wondering when my turn would come. Girls my age were marrying, having children, starting homes, building lives, and I was still waiting. At first, I didn't mind. Then people started asking questions. Not directly. Amish people rarely do things directly. The questions came wrapped in smiles. Have you met anyone special yet? Any young men catching your attention? Your mother was married by your age. Small comments, harmless on the surface, heavy underneath. The first man I courted was named Daniel. He was handsome, quiet, hard-working, the kind of man parents approved of immediately. When he first asked if he could drive me home from a singing, I felt my cheeks grow warm. I remember the moonlight shining across the buggy road, the steady rhythm of the horses' hooves, the nervous excitement in my chest. We talked for nearly 2 hours, about family, church, farming, future dreams. I thought honesty came naturally to him. I thought honesty came naturally to all Amish men. After all, we were taught that lying was a serious sin. Months passed. We spent more time together. Families began noticing. People began assuming. Then one Sunday afternoon, another girl approached me. She seemed uncomfortable, almost guilty. She told me Daniel had been spending time with her too. At first I laughed. I thought she was mistaken. Then she showed me a letter. My hands shook as I read it. The handwriting was unmistakable. Daniel's. The promises sounded familiar, because they were almost identical to things he had told me. I remember standing alone behind our barn that evening, the smell of hay drifting through the air, the sunset turning everything gold, and feeling something break inside me. Not because he chose someone else, because he lied. When I confronted him, he barely looked surprised. He simply said he hadn't officially committed to either of us. Technically, he was right, but something felt wrong, deeply wrong. I cried myself to sleep that night. Yet everyone around me treated it like a normal disappointment, part of growing up, part of courtship, part of life. So I convinced myself to move on. The second man entered my life nearly a year later. His name was Samuel. Samuel seemed different, more mature, more serious. He spoke often about faith, about character, about integrity. My father liked him immediately. My mother believed he would make a wonderful husband. For a while, I believed it too. Then little things started bothering me. Stories that didn't match. Promises that changed. Conversations that somehow left me confused. Whenever I questioned him, he had an explanation, a reason, an excuse. And every time I doubted myself instead of doubting him, I remember thinking maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I expected too much. Maybe this was simply how relationships worked. Then one winter evening, I discovered Samuel had been telling several families entirely different plans about his future. Different farms, different business arrangements, different intentions regarding marriage. Everyone believed a different version, including me. The realization left me cold, not because of the deception itself, because nobody seemed shocked. Almost as if everyone had learned to tolerate small dishonesty so long as it avoided conflict. That frightened me, but I wasn't ready to admit it. The third and fourth men brought similar experiences. Different details, different faces, the same uneasy feeling. One avoided difficult truths. One told people whatever they wanted to hear. One projected confidence he didn't possess. One presented himself differently depending on who was listening. By then I had begun questioning myself constantly. Why did this keep happening? Why did honesty seem so rare? Why did everyone act as though appearances mattered more than truth? I remember kneeling beside my bed one night after church, the house silent, the lamp flickering softly, my Bible open in front of me. I prayed harder than I ever had before. I asked God what I was missing. I asked why I felt so alone in a community surrounded by people, and for the first time, a frightening thought entered my mind. What if the problem wasn't individual men? What if something bigger was happening? The thought scared me so much I immediately pushed it away, because questioning the system felt dangerous. Questioning individuals was acceptable. Questioning the culture itself was not. Still, the question remained. Quiet, persistent, waiting. Then I met the fifth man, and everything changed. His name was Eli. Unlike the others, he wasn't especially charming. He wasn't the most handsome. He wasn't the most popular. In fact, many young women overlooked him completely. But from the beginning, there was something different about him. The first sign appeared during a conversation after a church singing. We were sitting beneath a maple tree while dozens of young people laughed nearby. I asked him a question, a simple question, one that most men answered carefully. I asked what he wanted from life. He was silent for a long moment. Then he said something no other Amish man had ever said to me. I don't always know. I stared at him. The answer surprised me. Not because it sounded weak, because it sounded honest. For once, someone wasn't pretending. For once, someone wasn't performing certainty. I didn't understand how important that moment would become, not until months later. Not until another woman helped me see the truth hidden beneath everything I had experienced. Her name was Miriam. She was nearly 70 years old, and she changed my life forever. I met her during a quilting gathering. Most women spent the afternoon talking and sewing. Miriam spent most of the day listening. There was something peaceful about her, something observant, as if she noticed things other people missed. At some point, our conversation turned toward courtship. I confessed more than I intended. The disappointments, the confusion, the repeated dishonesty, the frustration. She listened quietly. Then she asked one question. Have you ever wondered why so many people are afraid to tell the truth? I remember feeling stunned. Nobody had ever framed it that way before. Not dishonest people, afraid people. Miriam nodded slowly. Then she explained something I would spend years understanding. From childhood, we were taught that harmony mattered, unity mattered, obedience mattered, avoiding conflict mattered. And sometimes, she said, people become so afraid of disappointing others that they stop speaking honestly. Not because they're evil, because they're scared. Scared of judgment, scared of rejection, scared of consequences, scared of standing apart. Suddenly everything began making sense. Daniel, Samuel, the others, even many women I knew. People weren't always protecting themselves. Sometimes they were protecting their place within the community, and silence protected the system. The more I reflected on Miriam's words, the more I saw it everywhere. Families hiding struggles, couples hiding unhappiness, young people hiding doubts, everyone performing certainty, everyone protecting appearances, everyone afraid, including me, especially me. That realization became the beginning of the end of my Amish life. Because once you see something clearly, it becomes impossible to unsee. And once I started speaking honestly about what I felt, the pressure intensified. Friends grew uncomfortable. Family members worried. Church leaders asked questions. The message was never spoken directly, but it was clear. Stay quiet. Stay agreeable. Stay the same. Yet something inside me had already changed. For the first time in my life, I wanted truth more than approval. And that choice came with a cost. A painful one. But it also gave me something I had never possessed before. My own voice. Years later, I understand something I couldn't understand at 23. Most of the people who hurt me weren't villains. Many were trapped by the same expectations that trapped me. The system was bigger than any individual. Bigger than Daniel. Bigger than Samuel. Bigger than my family. Bigger than me. That doesn't excuse the pain, but it explains it. And perhaps that understanding is what finally allowed me to heal. The honest man I courted wasn't perfect. No one is. What made him different was simple. He told the truth even when the truth made him uncomfortable. And that lesson changed everything. Because real honesty isn't saying the right things. It's risking disapproval. It's choosing truth when pretending would be easier. It's allowing yourself to be seen. If you've ever felt pressured to stay silent, to hide who you are, or to become the version of yourself others expected, I want you to know something. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. And sometimes, the most courageous thing a person can do is speak honestly, even when it costs them something. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever discovered that the real problem wasn't one person, but a system that encouraged silence? Share your story in the comments. And if stories like mine resonate with you, subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter.